We are live.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Founder Hacks, our podcast where we share something we've seen, something we've read and something we've learned that's been a source of inspiration or edification for ourselves or the founders and entrepreneurs that we work with. Let me start by saying an enormous welcome to Mr. Alex Moore.
Hello, Ben.
Hello, Alex. And an equally effusive hello to Mr. Anthony Enright.
I'm going to have to look up Google again. Good to see you both.
Good to see you guys. Good to see you both. Now, this is a bit of a first. We've decided to make this Founder Hacks on a theme. After a little bit of feedback from one of our listeners, said they find it really useful if we set a theme for our Founder Hacks. So we're going to give that a go. And the first thing we're going to share is the theme of boldness, the theme of being brave and bold in your business growth decisions. So we've selected a seen, read and learned today, all of which speak to this theme of boldness. I think I'm going to start, guys. So what I've seen in this sphere of sort of boldness and braveness relates to a business that I'm involved in. And they were looking to put together quite an audacious deal with a third party. And they went a very long way down the route of doing this deal. You could say they were pretty much all the way down the aisle. They were stood at the altar, and it was all going ahead. And right at the 11th hour, the other party pulled out. They said, "Actually, this is too high risk. We don't want to do this." And it made me very thoughtful, because I wonder if that's come up for others when you're doing a business deal. Do you get to that point where actually, if someone's looking down the barrel of the gun and suddenly pulls out? And ultimately, the sense was that this business I was involved in clearly had an appetite for boldness that was a way beyond the partner they were working with. And I just sort of thought, all that wasted time. I wonder if that could have been something that was explored at an earlier stage in terms of an explicit conversation about, how bold are we? How ambitious are we? What is our appetite? I just thought it was a very curious thing. So, Anthony, why don't you kick us off?
You brought me back there, Ben, because this is really reminiscent of probably one of the biggest deals I've done in my sort of professional career about 3 or 4 years ago. And it was due to exchange on the 23rd of December. So 2 days before Christmas, and it was due to complete on the 23rd of December. And I think the day before, on the 22nd, I got a phone call to say it's all off and it's all done. Now, in actually fast forwarding, the deal was eventually done about 6 months later. Ultimately, that deal was not successful for one of the parties. And the reason why it wasn't successful is nobody ever asked me. So in my view, it wasn't successful for the other party because nobody ever asked me what I wanted. Why was I doing the deal? Nobody ever asked. They made assumptions as to why I would be keen to do the deal. And I was very keen to do the deal, but not for the reasons which it turned out that they were. And so when you were explaining this during our sort of editorial, I thought, wow, it's such a simple, basic thing in my own experience that you'd imagine would be one of the first things you do along that way. But so often other things certainly in this situation, other things took over. And so for me, huge learning and hearing you on that, it was just like, wow, how much, it's so painful when it falls over and so painful for certain parties when it doesn't work out as they thought it would. And have we just asked the basic questions? Why is it in your interest to do the deal? Does that align to what we're looking to achieve from it? So
yes, well, assumption is the mother of all.
Absolutely.
All things falling over, let's say. But Alex, you must have experienced similar things at different times.
To me,
career.
looking at the being bold statement, to me, it's the as a founder of a business, inhibited the only inhibition that a founder of a business would have. Sorry to stumble over my words. Maybe isn't it just their own ambition? And there's a lot on your shoulders as a founder. You're the person that has to worry about paying everyone at the end of the month, and there's a balance of being reckless and careful. And I've always thought, my friend Rich Robinson, who's I had a discussion with him years ago. It stayed in my head, and it was about being a good founder of a business. You've got that balance of realism and optimism. So yeah, going for it. Wow, yeah, let's do it, and let's make it all happen. But also having that respect, like, yeah, if we go for it, what's the downside? How can I still pay everyone at the end of the month? And for me, that's what I like. And the really good founders and entrepreneurs that I've met along the way are very good at that. And I think, this whole thing about being bold is, yeah, why not? And there was a quote, I like quotes. And I'm afraid this one is a celebrity CEO quote. I'm very wary of celebrity CEO quotes because I'm always, number one, did they ever say it? And, and number two, yeah, just because they're a celebrity CEO, does it really matter? But there was one from Elon Musk, and it was one that was shared with us recently. Stop being patient and start asking yourself, how do I accomplish my 10-year plan in 6 months? You'll probably fail, but you'll be a lot further on than the person who simply accepted it was going to take 10 years. And I like it. This is the man who's trying to colonize the moon. So, I thought it was quite clever. Anthony, do you have a thought on that?
Well, just as you were talking there, Alex, I'm thinking, what was driving, and Ben, probably a question for you, what was driving, why did they turn it down? And is it the fear and is that the reason why they turned the deal down? Because for me, listening to Alex talk there, as entrepreneurs, I always think one of our gifts is being bold, going for it. And quite often, and we don't always admit this, but, we'll work out how we're actually going to achieve it. We'll always work out a way how we're going to pay staff. We'll always get there because actually that drive of that destination is huge. And actually, sometimes you have to fake it till you make it. Sometimes you have to wing it. But generally, as entrepreneurs, we have that drive to keep going to reach that destination. So I just wondered what the reason was for turning down at the altar at the last minute. Is it fear?
I think it could have been. I mean, I think in these situations, you never really know what the other side are thinking, do you? I mean, you can ask the questions, but the answer you get may not always be a straight answer. You don't know. But the perception I got was there was a degree of this is too high risk, and I absolutely respect that. We have many stakeholders, don't we? Often you've got shareholders who've invested money and given you money. On the basis you will give them some more back later. I mean, that's kind of how it works. Do you know what I mean? And then you've got customers who you want to keep and you want to please, who your bread and butter. And then you've got your staff, which you feel a profound, people who've got a job in your company that you feel a profound sense of responsibility towards. So of course it's always difficult to balance. But then equally, I think it speaks to your culture, because actually, what did those staff sign up for? Did they sign up for a steady state for 20 years? Do they want to grow? Most people I work with want to grow. So there's a kind of obligation to grow the business in order to accommodate the ambitions of your whole team. So I think it also speaks to culture as well. And of course, what is the sort of the way you've contracted with those investors, and how have you talked about that appetite to risk? Have you sold your company to them in the process of getting their investment, or have you actually shared with them very openly what the plan is, what the risk is along the way? I personally would much rather sort of accept an investor on the basis of a kind of honest account of where the company is, what it's going, so that they're clear, and you don't have that situation of creating undue expectations. I know some others would very aggressively sell a company to investors and take the money at any cost. I generally prefer not to do that. I think it's not the right way, but I think it is obviously a very tough thing to balance. But I think, shall we move on? I think that's a fascinating conversation, and never one could go on. But I believe, Mr. Enright, you've read something this week you'd like to share that kind of connects again with this theme of being bold and making those brave decisions in business.
Yeah, I've got to be careful with this one, because I'm often accused of always seeing the positive and the negative, and sometimes I think some people around me can find that a bit tiring. I however, don't.
Nor do I.
And I think when we're talking about reading things, certainly if it's in the sort of broadsheets or the papers or certain websites, there's a lot of negative stuff out there at the moment, and a lot of things that can really drag us down. And so I was reading, having one of my very first jobs was with Burton's Menswear and part of the Debenhams group. So it was a tinge of sadness, and actually it brought back lots of memories of working, because I did in fact work in a Debenhams store for Burton's at one point after I think I was doing my A-levels. And to see that Debenhams have, after 242 years, they're no longer on the high street. Amazing, 242 years. And there was a lot of negativity about the CEO, a lot of negativity about their situation. As I was reading it, however, I was looking through it going and really looking at Boohoo's now takeover of their online business. And Boohoo started on a market stall, right? And I just, as I was reading the articles, I thought, come on, this is such an opportunity now. And I know we talk about this, and we've spoken about it, certainly before Christmas, we were talking about it as well, about 2021 and what an opportunity. But the high street is changing. You know, the way in which we do business is changing. And there's a huge opportunity for those who are feeling bold and have got to feel that they've got an opportunity to really go for it. Look at Boohoo, started on a market stall and have just taken over Debenhams' online business. Who'd have thought? And I just think from that perspective, you know, I was talking to somebody who runs a business, and it was very, very important for them to have a central London address and a central London location. But all of a sudden, they're now looking at their business offering and what they do. And actually, there could be a huge market share for them, given that are people going to be traveling into these central places like London 5 days a week? No, they're probably not. So actually, it means now he can start to look at more localized towns as far as providing his service. Huge opportunity for him in that business. So I just thought I'd be the optimist and go, where's the opportunity? You know, there's huge opportunity now. The high street is changing. The way we do business is changing. Who can jump on that? Who can take that and really do something with it? So, Alex, what were your thoughts? Being an ex-Debenhams boy as well.
Yeah, well remembered. Yeah, when I finished, when I came back from New Hampshire College, it was my first job. I worked in the head office, so I was obviously more senior than you. Maybe I was your boss, Anthony.
You may well have been paying my wages. Who knows?
Actually, I was a junior.
You are a lot older than me. Can we as well?
Yeah, I was a junior merchandiser, so I wasn't in charge of anything except the paper clips. But anyway, I did learn a lot during that job, and I found it very, very sad as well. So when you brought this up, I was like, oh, is this a good? And you did make me think. Actually, I thought this was a sad story. But yeah, I'm having started another business on a market stall as Boohoo did. I think there is a grain of well done, these guys, and they've adjusted to the world as it is now. And I think for me, what I'm seeing is that the people who can see. There's a lot of just surviving is succeeding at the moment in the business world due to the very difficult sort of situation we are facing. But those people who are looking a year out from now or 2 years out from now and are focusing on science are the ones who are making the big, bold moves. And I think a lot of these guys are the ones, when they write their memoirs in 40 years, they go, oh, I did this at this time. And these will be the people who will do well. And I think having that optimism is not such a bad thing, Anthony. I like you for it. And just that focusing on, not now, not in 2 months, but what's the world going to look like in 1 year from now, and 2 years, and 5 years. And let's go ahead on that basis. That being bold about the future and optimistic, why not? Yeah. Ben, what do you think?
The first question I was going to ask, as I've got the privilege here of two ex-Debenhams staff, I wonder how bold you found them as a business when you worked for them. And I'm seeing, for
No
the benefit
comments.
of the listener, there's some faces being pulled, which doesn't surprise me. I'm sure it wouldn't surprise anybody. You could partly talk about the fact that these businesses that are very long established, like Debenhams, grew up in a world that was very different, that worked at a different pace, and that has lingered in their culture for a very long time. Very difficult to turn that ship around. But I also hugely agree. What a celebration of the boldness for, Boohoo, that only moments ago were a market stall and now buying one of the most sort of venerable brands in British business history. That's quite extraordinary. It's both a cautionary tale, but I think Anthony's right with the optimism. We've also got to look at it as an inspiration to say that this is boldness a choice anymore? Perhaps it's only the bold that are going to actually survive, and maybe we all need to re-examine our risk appetite in this world as it is today, because that sort of steady state way of being in business will be very limiting, and it won't work potentially. We'll see more, right? Debenhams won't be the only one.
Absolutely. And Ben, you remind me of during the global recession 2008, which in my experience at that time seemed to last for 3 or almost 4 years. And I remember being asked a question, as we came out of that: are you playing not to lose? Are you playing not to lose? And all of a sudden I sat there and go, God, we're really being conservative. We're absolutely playing not to lose. What happens when you play not to lose? You generally lose. So I absolutely agree that potentially the only way forward now is that boldness, right? Is that boldness. What is next? What are you going to do next? And going for it.
Very good.
I'd love to hear from our listener what they think to this. If there's what's really happening out there and where people are potentially seeing these opportunities that where people are being bold. And on that note, we're going to move on to our learned. And Alex, I think this is down to you this week.
Well, it is. I think, again, on this theme of being bold, which I like, actually. It makes things like where it's going. For me, being bold is all about growing. And as I have been bold, I've usually had my wife with my restaurant business, my wife, Sai Pin, in my ear going, do that, who's probably the most bold person I've ever met. And I would be the one to worry about. And I think having that boldness, having that, that person in my ear has been very, very interesting over the years. And I've found the advantage, the result of being bold is that it's pushed me out of my comfort zone. It has made me grow as a person alongside my business. And I've had to keep up with the business, and the business has got to keep up with me. And, and it's all about, setting a goal so big you can achieve it until you grow into a person who can. And I just thought, that's the plus side. When it goes well, if I've considered the downside, if I'm not rolling the dice, I'm taking an educated guess, having protected the farm from losing everyone's livelihood. And that's the thing for me. That's the plus side of being bold. Not, the business succeeding and maybe paying myself more every month, maybe selling it and getting some money out has been great. But to grow alongside my business was the most rewarding thing that I've found. And that was the biggest advantage of being bold in my life. Who would like to comment on that? Ben?
Well, I completely agree. I think I vaguely remember what a comfort zone feels like. I
Long time ago.
I don't really remember having much of my career within one. Comfort zone activities for me are small pockets of time. But I think it's so important. I think, this is why perhaps it's what sits underneath. We've had so many founder hacks that have talked about that relationship between a founder and their business. It's sort of that intimate connection between the business and the person who started it, in terms of how it feels for customers, for staff, for everybody to interact with the business. And I think that's what this rests on ultimately. That it's why it's so important, because your growth as a founder is probably the thing that will come to limit your business. I think I've been in that situation before. I've broke through those barriers to growth and got to the next level, and sometimes I haven't, and I recognize that perhaps the business could have done more had I had the muscle to grow myself through the challenges that were being thrown at us. So I think it absolutely is the case, and I love this idea that when you set a goal, that goal can be expressed in terms of the growth that you need to achieve in order for that goal to be realized for you and for your business. So I think it's a great way of looking at it, and it just reminds us how important it is to look after ourselves and our own growth alongside the business. It's when you're growing yourself, you are growing your business, I think, in the majority of circumstances.
Yeah, and I on that point, Ben, and I love hearing you talk about that. It's we see people out there that are that set their businesses up, and then every 4 or 5 years they've exited and they've gone on to the next thing, and they've started something else, or they've taken over something else, and because they know through their experience that they have a certain shelf life as far as their energy and their growth is concerned, and it reaches a certain point. Because I think for me, when you first set out on that journey, and when you start a business, you've got all that energy, and you're knocking down doors, you're putting out fires, and you're just going, I can do anything, and I'm learning along the way. And actually, it's once that sort of that fire and that starts to move away, and you're in it slightly longer, so maybe after the first couple of years, and it's how do you continue that growth journey? So what parameters, what things do you put in place in order to continue that? Or do you just go, no, I know I've got a 3 to 4, maybe 5 year type window here, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to grow it to that point, I'm going to exit, and then I'm going to start again. Because I think the challenge for me is when you get to that, and having run one business for 19 years, really, almost way too long, and you're almost having to reinvent yourself every sort of 3 or 4 years in order to keep that journey going and that growth. And I found that incredibly hard work. Whereas I quite like the idea of having that 3 to 5 year journey, and having a real clear objective of exiting within that after that 3 year point to 5 years, and then starting again. I wonder how others sustain that over that very long period of time.
Maybe that should be the thread for our next one, guys. That's an interesting one in itself.
It is indeed. It is indeed. So on that note, chaps, I believe we are more or less at time. So I'll try as ever to summarise our learning today on the theme of boldness. So, can we make sure that we understand that appetite for boldness? Is there enough boldness on both sides of a business deal? Equally, how does it live in your culture? Can we take inspiration from the very sad situation of Debenhams, 242 years on the high street and now acquired by a business that was a market stall just a moment ago? Yes, it's a cautionary tale, but is it also a celebration? Is it going to be the bold businesses that seize the future? Maybe Boohoo is among them. Finally, can you set a goal big enough that you need to grow in order to achieve it? Maybe if you don't feel that slight sense of intimidation around your goals, they're not big enough. And can you make sure that when you've got those goals, that you are giving yourself permission to invest in yourself so you can grow alongside your business? So on that note, it remains to say a massive thank you to Mr. Alex Moore.
Thanks, Ben. Thanks for listening.
And an equally gigantic thank you to Mr. Anthony Enright.
Thanks, Ben. Thanks, Alex.
As ever, please remember that Founder Hacks is not just a podcast, it is also a blog and a newsletter. You can sign up at atomics.co.uk and get your Founder Hacks in the written form, as well as hearing our musings through our podcast. And as ever, we would love any feedback or stories you would like to share. Give us your Founder Hacks. Tell us how what you're learning and what you're reading and what you're seeing that's helping you grow your business. Just drop us a note at hello@atomics.co.uk. I've been Ben Thomas, this has been Founder Hacks, and thank you very much indeed for listening.